onTrack is the software that HRI and ServiceMonster kind of came up with to help manage your, your customer relationship manager. You've got, marketing built into it. You've got scheduling, invoicing, pretty much everything you need to do. And so we're going to walk through, some of the basics of what it does here. When you first log in, I guess the first question I'll address that I hear quite a bit is about your existing data. If you have information in another program like Camelot or QuickBooks or Service CEO, Sage, any of those things, we can import that data for you to make sure you don't have to re-enter all this stuff. And when you first log in, what you'll see is you've got, your last 30 days, you'll have some graphs here to show what your production is like, your repeat rates, what your job averages are looking like. Real good financial reports so you can kind of hone in on how your business is doing kind of currently instead of just, on like a yearly basis or something like that. And what I'll do today, there's a lot of different ways to do things in the program. I'm going to kind of give you the scenic tour so that I can show you some of the more in-depth things. But realistically, from the time a customer calls in to the time you book a job, schedule them, everything like that, you're talking maybe a couple of minutes if that. You get pretty efficient with it, even with getting all their information and everything. So the first thing I'm going to show you is we're going to go to the account screen. And this is going to just be sort of a list of all your accounts in here. It's searchable. So if you want to search for a person's name, you can type this in. It'll bring up the account that way. You can also, if somebody calls in and you've got caller ID, you can punch in the last 4 digits of their phone number and look them up that way. You see, I'm just using that as the example, but that's what it would show you. So you can go into that customer's account screen if they already have an account with you. Otherwise, you can just create a new account, but these are the basic fields you have. And with onTrack, really all you have to do to establish an account for somebody is you want to have a first and last name, and you want to have a lead source. And the lead source is real important because we've got a lot of ways to track, what your business is doing for you, what your advertising is doing, your return on investment strategies, all of that. We give you a bunch of reporting so you can really hone in on that. Now, of course, if somebody calls in, you want to get probably a phone number, maybe an email address. Email addresses are becoming really important now because after the fact, it allows you in our system to do free email marketing. You can do things like appointment reminders. You can send out thank you letters, reminder letters, 6 months or 3 months after the job is done, things like that. So if you get in the habit of asking for email addresses, that gives you some free marketing that you can tap into. Now, the other thing, you'll have a do not contact section here so you can, if somebody decides they want to be taken off of your email list, you can just put a check mark in here. You can define your own account types as well. So by default, when you enter somebody, they're listed as a customer. But sometimes you'll have vendors. You may have prospects if you ever purchase a prospect list or a lead list. I've got some customers who, when they do promotions or they mail out promotional things, for instance, they won't want to mail anything to a restaurant because it's a lot more labor intensive. You have grease and high traffic areas. So they created a restaurant account type. And how this works, all these fields, everything you see on the screen, when you go to send out some kind of marketing, whether it's a letter, whether it's an email, you have filters that can select based off of everything on the screen, whether to mail to them, not mail to them. So you could say, I want to mail to everybody who's a residential customer that is not a restaurant. You could say, I want to send out an email to everybody in a specific zip code, anything like that. Now we have a commercial checkbox here. This is how our system determines whether it's residential and commercial. So when you enter somebody in there, it's real easy. If it's a commercial job, you click this. That helps you separate not only in terms of marketing later, who you want to send to, but also in reporting so you can differentiate between residential and commercial reporting. Because a lot of times those numbers are different, especially with repeat rates. We've got a site reference here when you print out your orders. That'll show up as cross street. You may have seen a cross street or a geographical location in other programs. So if they live on Main Street and the intersection is 3rd, you could put that in here. You can put across from fire station. You can put a gate code if there's an access code that you need. Basically, any kind of information that's static and is not going to change that you want your technician to have, you can put in here. Now, we also do some things here. If you go to somebody's, to a customer's profile tab, you'll see here there are a few custom fields. And you can create your own custom fields if you want to. Now, right now, we have a thing for pets. So if you get in the habit of asking your customers what their pet name is or what type of pet they have, you can type that in there as a text box. You can do the same thing with, children. You can put in subdivisions, which is kind of helpful if you're doing a couple of jobs in a subdivision. You may want to send out an email to everybody else in that same subdivision that you've worked for before to say, hey, we're offering, 20% off if you do a job on this day between these times, something like that. And then what you can do with this for marketing purposes, let's say down the line after you've gathered a lot of pet names, if you want to send a promotional letter, not only can you check and decide that you want to send it to everybody who has a pet, but you could address your letter to the pet's name. You could do some kind of mail merge information like, hey, it's been 6 months since we did Sparky's carpets. Are you ready for us to come back? Anything like that. It's real flexible. So this is the first step. A customer calls in. You get their basic information. You don't have to go as in-depth as I did here. You can get their basic info, and then you go to new order. And depending on how you run your business, a lot of companies up front will take some really generic basic information, and then when they get on site, that's when they'll sort of evaluate what the job is and what it entails, what the pricing is. A lot of other times, depending on how you're set up, you may get all the information up front, set your pricing, give them a quote, and then send your technician out in the field to do the job, and then they can do upsells and different things after that. But ahead of time, if you need to, you can choose from a list of your items. We have sort of a preloaded list of items here, but if you have your own products and services, we can add those in as well. And for this one, you basically scroll down. Let's say that they're doing carpet repairs. And you can set up all your products and services to have default quantities and pricing, but you can change any of this stuff in here. If it's a real complicated job, you can make it more expensive. You can make it less expensive. If you want to, you could add a discount because they're, a referral program or anything like that. Say give them $20 off. You can also, if there's a percentage, if you do percentage discounts, you could say I want to give them 20% off the order itself, and that calculates everything. And as you type all this in here, it automatically updates this real time. So when your customer is on the phone and you type this in, you can give them a realistic quotation before they hang up. And this is one thing that it'll do. It'll remind you about your lead source to make sure that you're tracking where these are coming from. So for lead sources, when you go in here, these are sort of a predefined list of lead sources, but you'll have your own advertising, your own leads, your own marketing campaigns that you've done. So you can just pick any of these. I'm going to pick lawn signs because I've never done lawn signs myself. If you have any kind of referral or bonus program and somebody, one of your existing customers, refers a customer, you could use this. And then you could look up their account information and give them credit as the lead source instead. And this comes into play later. We actually track everything where the lead sources come from, whether it's a customer, a marketing campaign, and you can generate a list of every customer who's given you a referral, and if you want to give them some kind of bonus or send them out a certificate or 20% off the next job, anything like that is possible. So that's the basics of that. So you get your customer information, you create a basic shell of an order. The other thing, if you don't want to go in ahead of time and put all these individual details and pricing in here, there's a notes section down here that you can type for your technician. And you can just put something like carpet clean, 3 rooms, pets, and you can save that, and that'll print out instead of doing all this. And you won't have to fill out all this stuff for individual line items until after the order's done. So whichever way you prefer, it's flexible enough that it's going to work with what you need. So once we've got that, what we want to do is we want to go and schedule this thing. Now, what I'm going to do for this purpose, I'm going to actually go back a couple of weeks where we had some jobs scheduled so I can show you how the scheduling screen works. So let's say today is Wednesday, the 20th, and then tomorrow they want to schedule a job. Well, you see behind the mouse cursor here, it's a light bluish color. That color corresponds to this color wheel over here. How the color wheel works is in the center is your business location. Jobs off to the north are going to be blue. Jobs to the west will be red. Anything to the east would be green. And the farther away the job is from your location, the darker the shade of the color will be. So what's going to happen when you go to schedule this job, you see this is kind of a bluish color, which means it's going to be off to your north. And so what you may want to do is place it somewhere in here if possible where there's a blue job also. Instead of putting it, for instance, you know, something off to the west where it's a pinkish or a red color. If you use the call center through Chem-Dry, one nice thing about that is they may not be familiar with your area the way that you are. You may know when somebody goes to schedule a job exactly where everything is. But with them, what they can do is when they go to schedule this, they'll see the color of the job, and they can schedule this so that it's efficiently located. It's going to keep you from going back and forth, north to south, with a lot of driving time. You know, basically make efficient routes so that you can get more work done.
I guess I'll just have to be quiet because I can't find it. That's something to do.
Now, when you go into your options, there's a few things you can do. And I'm going to go into the schedule settings to show you a few things. On your schedule, you have the option to just use those colored boxes to kind of show the location. But if you do something like, if you go and use the schedule screen to call people for booking reminders, you may want to put the account name and the contact phone number or a city and state. You can put checkboxes on here and it will display this information on the schedule for you. So you can look at one screen without going back and forth, have phone numbers for contacts, know what the city is, basically call all your customers from one screen and do appointment reminders. If you go through the HRI call center, they do the reminders for you. We also have a way if you want to do email reminders where you can send out automatic notifications that'll show them the job date, time, all those things. And that's basically it. You go in, you get the customer information, you find out what they want done, and then you put them on the schedule. And that's really all you have to do up front. On the back end of things, really all you have to do, you go back into your work order, you do any kind of upsells down here, change the quantities, change the pricing if you need to, and then you're going to change it from a work order to an invoice. And that's pretty much the process right there. If you do estimates a lot, you can use this estimate type to create orders. That's really helpful if somebody calls in for some information, they want an estimate, but then they don't end up doing the job with you. Because you can keep that estimate sitting around and maybe a few months later, just filter out all your estimates and give them a call and say, hey, did you ever do that work? Are you still interested? You can drum up a little bit of extra business that way. Or if they just cancel and decide they don't want to do the job, but you've already gotten all their information on what they wanted, you could void out the order instead of just deleting it. And that way you can also go pull up all the voided orders because you know these are customers that are interested in doing work. For whatever reason they didn't, but you can still pull up all their information and what they were looking at. And you'll find a lot of this is based on marketing. We're pretty heavily loaded on the marketing aspect on the back end of things because we want to generate repeat business for you. So you've got the ability to send out letters, send out emails. You can even compose like a quarterly newsletter that you would email out to customers, which has been pretty effective. And there's a few ways to do some different things in here. I think when you watch videos, when you first sign up, you're going to see there are a bunch of different ways to go through here, a bunch of different paths to get everywhere. The one I'm showing you today is probably the longest path to get it done. But when somebody calls in, it's as simple as hitting quick add, and clicking New Work Order, and you can go in and just start creating that order on the phone with your customer right away. In the report section, you'll have your financial reports. You can look for accounts that are past due. You can send out billing statements to anybody that still owes you money. You can print out sales tax reports. So if you don't use any kind of a third-party, financial software like QuickBooks or anything like that, we can generate your sales tax reports for you. There's a pretty nice one here that I use a lot, the order progress report. It allows you to pick a date range. And so by default, it gives you month to date, but you could go back a month, you could go back a year, or you could go until the end of the month if you want to see what the projection is looking like for the rest of your month. You can filter out just estimates, or you can look at just invoices. You can mix and match all this information, and it'll give you a report that you can export to Excel if you need to, of all the customers, all the jobs that you're looking for in that date range. It'll show you the totals, the amounts, everything. The other thing, we have employee commission reports. So if you have any kind of a commission structure, we work with a lot of different ways of doing commissions. For instance, if you have a base commission of 20% on a job, but then on upsells you do 40%, and you have, regular technicians who get a certain commission and senior technicians that get a different commission structure, you can set all that up in there. And then at the end of your pay period, you go into the employee commissions report. It'll show you what their sales were, what their upsells were, what their total commissions are, all in one form. So you don't even have to export things into Excel and go do all the math on that and keep track of all that. It does it all in the system for you. The other thing, in this marketing section, you'll find a lot of different reports for lead sources, where accounts came from, account referrals, and you can get summary reports if you just want basic information, or you can go to detailed reports for these if you want to really drill down and get a lot of specifics. But for instance, if I go into account referrals, I can see that Chris Cranky, for instance, has basically referred 2 people to us. One person actually did a job with us, one person has not done yet. So 50% of the people he's recommended have done jobs resulting in $266. And this is real nice for a referral program, because you can go in and see who your cheerleaders are, who's really touting your business and putting out a good word for you. So if you want to do anything to kind of compensate them, give them a discount, anything like that, you can. For lead sources themselves, you can generate a lead source report, and again, these are all customizable by date range. And so you can come down and say, you know what, we did door hangers last month. I want to see how effective that was. So when you first enter an account, it asks you for that lead source. So you put in door hangers on 3 of these customers, and it shows you here who they were. And on these, they're $0 orders. These are just test orders, but it will show you, like in this instance up here, what the total revenue was that got generated by those. And of course, from here, you can actually go in, if you just want a real simple report, you can go in here and say, I just want to look at one lead source, show me what came out of that. So we do a lot of marketing, a lot of reporting on the back end. Now in marketing, there's a lot of things you can do. And again, I'm going to show you the complicated way, but keep in mind there are wizards that walk through here. If you want to create an export file, you can click this. If you want to send emails, there's an email wizard that walks you through and does all these steps for you. But I'm going to show you kind of the more complex way. So we go to a campaign, and let's say I want to send out a mail campaign. I want to send out some letters, and I want to print labels. So I'm going to give this a name here and save it. And I'm going to show you a few of the filters that you can use in here. And what this does is this is going to help you determine which portion of your customer base you would like to send to. Now on everybody's account screen, there's a checkbox that says active. That's real useful, because if a customer moves out of the area, you don't want to just get rid of all their information. You want to keep that on file, but you don't really want to send out mailers or anything like that to them. So you can put account active, make sure that checkbox is true, make sure there's a check in there. You can do some things like the city, for instance. If you want to mail out to a certain city or a certain zip code, if you're doing a promotion and you want to be in one area, you can select those in there. You can select between commercial and residential accounts. And then you can go down, you can say, you know, order next job date. If you want to send out some kind of reminder letters, you could say if their next job is scheduled within a day or 2 days, I want to send something to them for a reminder. In here, you can put in, you know, if they have pets, and you could say, I just want to make sure that's not blank. So if I want to send out a promotion to anybody who's got pets, I make sure that pet field is not blank. That's going to send to every pet owner. And you've got some things like the last invoice dates, last newsletter campaign, any of these kind of things that you want to send out. Last invoice date we see quite a bit. And kind of how this works, in our system, when somebody completes a job and you convert it to an invoice, that date is what we use to do a lot of marketing. So if it's 3 months down the line and you want to send out to customers who did a job with you 3 or 4 months ago, it's based on that invoice date. So you can say if the order last invoice date is between, let's say, 5 and 6 months. That'll filter out everybody who meets that criteria. And you can do different ones. You could have a letter for somebody that it's been a year, somebody if it's been 3 months. You could run a weekly thing if somebody did a job that week just to get out a thank you letter. So all these are very customizable in here. You also have some things like this. Let's say you want to send out something to everybody who had PERT or anybody who had some kind of protectant job. It keeps track of the types of services you have, and you can include those. Now, this is real helpful if you do carpet cleaning, tile and grout, upholstery, area rugs, different kind of things where you may want to send out a promotion for area rug specials. So you can pull from every order you've got. You could say, I want anybody who's done an area rug with me in the last year, I want to send them out a promotion. And you can narrow it down as specifically as you want. You could say, I want everybody who did area rugs within the last 2 years in this zip code or this subdivision. I mean, it gets as detailed as you want it to get, or it can be as easy as you want it. And kind of what happens when you go to set these up, I know that I'm running through this and it looks really complicated. But what will happen when you're ready to run this, you can call our support line. We've got unlimited free support. And we'll walk you through setting these things up. We can help you with the filters. We can, kind of spot check everything, make sure it's all good, and then help you run the campaign and kind of walk you through the steps. One thing I'll show you, when we went into orders and we went to close out an order, you convert it from the work order to the invoice, and you can go back and forth between that status. It assigns one order number to every phase of that. So if you start out with an estimate, and the estimate is 5068 for the estimate number, when they decide to book a job with you, that work order keeps the same number. When you invoice it, it keeps the same invoice, same number all the way through the process. So it's real easy to track. As far as your forms go, when you want to send out any kind of forms, you can go to a print preview and you can either print this out or you have the option to email the printout. So you could email a PDF to your customer, which is really nice for getting email addresses, because if you talk to them and say, look, I can go ahead and send you your invoice by email, you get a lot better response, I find, than just saying, hey, can I have your email address for marketing? So let's say in somebody's account you want to leave notes, because note-taking is kind of helpful in here. You can go into your Activities tab. You create a new activity and a new note, and you can type in here. You could cut and paste the contents of an email. Once you save it, There's a documents place if you want to upload before and after pictures or anything specific to that customer that you need to save. If you want to schedule a follow-up call, you could actually schedule a new call. And what will happen here, you can pick a due date. So if a customer says, you know what, I don't really want to do anything right now, but if you give me a call back in a month, I think I'll be ready, then you can go in here and you can schedule something for next month. And you can type in your notes for what you need to do. Once this is all saved, when you log in and you go to your Home tab, you'll have access to a call list. And so in a case like this, you would have one call. It'll show you the subject, the phone number. You could actually work straight out of here and just go through. You'll have a link to click to get into that customer's account with all their information. So you can schedule calls ahead of time, and they'll pop up here as they come due. Let's say instead of sending out an email or printing labels, printing letters, let's say you wanted to actually call. Then you just go to create a new call campaign, and it works the same exact way. You can come in here, and you use the same filters. And you could say, I want to take everybody who, did an order, say, last invoice date, and let's make that within 1 year, for instance. And when you hit Run Campaign, you have the option to create an export file so you can open this in Excel and print it out, or you can create a ServiceMonster call list. What happens with that is you can just have it available to everyone that's logged into the system, or you can pick specific people. So if I'm the one making the calls, I would assign these to myself. And you'll run through here, and what it does, it will filter out all the criteria that you want to look for, and it will create a call list for you. And now when we go to the Home tab, you'll see here we have calls, and there are 12 of them listed. Each of these has a link that I can click on. So when I go to make these calls, I click on this link, it pulls up all their information. I know the number I need to dial. I can leave my notes on here. I can close everything out from one screen. There's also a review list, so if you want to spot check accounts, when you go into an order, there's a place at the bottom of every order where you can click to review. So let's say we did this job and I want to check back with them for some reason. I want to spot check how the work was done, kind of take a customer sampling survey. So the next time I log in, when I look down here on my review list, their account is flagged. So that I can go in here, same kind of thing as the call list. I can bring up the order from there. I can look at all the information that they had done. I can give them a call, ask how things turned out. This is really good if you have somebody who has a real tough stain that you think there might be some wicking or it might come back to the surface, some spotting. So for something like that, you may want to set a follow-up instead of trying to explain, 45 days from now what the policy is on, hey, we have a certain time frame. And that way you can keep, kind of touch base with everybody and see how they're doing after the job. Now again, in here we have, for instance, if you come to the Home tab and you want to close out some unpaid invoices, you can show who owes you money from here. If you need to complete it, you can just click on this arrow, and if it's unpaid, you can apply payment right here, close it out, everything from one screen. And of course this, if you're doing a lot of residential jobs, I know a lot of you will actually collect a payment at the time of the job. So this is usually more of a commercial-sided thing, but it can work both ways. We also sync up with QuickBooks. And so that's in your QuickBooks export. And when you go in here, it'll show how many invoices, how many payments are pending, ready to be moved over into QuickBooks. And so QuickBooks has a thing called a web connector that allows us to sync up with them so you don't have to dual enter your information. Basically, when you start using onTrack, you enter everything in here. When you're ready to move it over, you go to QuickBooks and you say, I want to sync up this information. It'll take all 16 of these pending invoices and all 15 of these pending payments, along with the customer information, your products and services that were performed, to your chart of accounts in QuickBooks. It moves all that stuff over for you. So you'll never have to dual enter any of this stuff. Yeah, we do import from Camelot. We've gotten pretty good at that. We've actually gotten a lot of accounts coming over from Camelot over the years. That's a pretty smooth process. A lot of that is actually automated now because it's gotten to the point where, you know, certain fields in Camelot are always the same. And so with Camelot, we can bring in everything, and it's pretty quick. I mean, we'll say it's a 3-day turnaround, even with large databases. Realistically, from the time you sign up, you're talking 2, maybe 3 days, if that. All right, so on your scheduling screen, what you'll have, and in this scenario, we have 5 different routes that are scheduled. And unlike a lot of other programs, we like to kind of put all our routes together so that if you're looking at one day and somebody wants to schedule, you can see what your routes are for that day, what the routes are for tomorrow, and kind of efficiently place stuff in there. And what I'm going to do here, let me go back again. I want to go back to a week where we had a bunch of jobs scheduled in here because I think it's a little easier to show you. You can hover over existing jobs if you need all the information from them, or you can just go, let's say they want to book a job Thursday at 9 a.m. Click on New Job, it pops up a window. You can change the duration. You can put in any kind of notes that you need your technicians to have. And you save that, and what happens, as soon as you save that job, it's going to block it off over here on your schedule. And so if you have an office manager, for instance, if you have somebody from the call center that's scheduling a job, if you have a technician in the field who's checking their schedule, this is all real time. So if you're using the mobile application and you've got somebody in the office at the same time using this, they're all going to look at the same information. It's all updated real time so they know when to schedule things. And you can put in, you know, for instance, I showed you a little bit about the color grouping, but what you can do, let's say you put something on here and then they say, you know what, really what I need is I'm not going to be available Thursday. Can I move this to Friday? So what you can do, you can hold down your control button, and that allows you to drag and drop jobs. And let's say we want to move this over to Friday. Then you just move it from there. You can also, if you need to, for instance, reschedule it to make it a little bit longer duration. You don't have to go into the pop-up box to do that. You can just resize it here, which is the same thing. If you go in here, if you actually click on the job, you could say 2.5. I want to change it to 3.5 hours. And then on the scheduling screen, it will actually book it out a little bit longer. And you can move it over to whichever route you want. If you have something, for instance, where you have 2 jobs that are scheduled on the same route at the same time, you'll get a situation like this where it's red, and you can say, I want to unstack the conflicting schedule information, and it'll print them side by side, so then you can take this job and move it to a different route.
Can you get more detail if you just go to one day without hovering over the color?
Yeah, so if you go to the daily view, it's going to give you a little bit wider view. It'll show you this kind of situation here. Let's go to the 21st. So by default, what happens is you're just going to have these colored boxes to show you the location and distance to the job. But you click on Show Details, and any of these details you show here are customizable. So you can pick what you want to show up here. So right now you still have the color for the job box that shows your location and distance, show the customer's name, the work order number, how much it is. Let's say we want to display a little bit different information. So we're going to go into our schedule settings. And let's say we don't really need the order information or the job info, but we would like to have the phone number, and let's say maybe we want to have the city and zip. just to kind of show where things are. And you've got one side for weekly and also one side for daily. When you save this, you go back into the schedule, and now this is what I was talking about with your phone numbers. You have all this information here where you can just dial these one at a time. Say, hey, you've got an appointment coming up later today. You can expect us between this time and this time. And you can customize what information actually shows up on the screen. So you open up their account screen when they call in, and it'll show you last job and work order. So you can open up that last work order or invoice or whatever it is, and you'll have all the information down here for what they did. In this case, I've got it blank because it's a test, but you'll have their 2 rooms, their hallway, whatever it is in here, the quantities, the pricing that you charge them, everything will be in here. And all you have to do is hit the copy button, and it's going to copy this as a new work order and assign it a new work order number. So now the work order is 5069. It's a brand new work order, but it'll have all the same information already filled out down here. Okay, what happens on a typical schedule for a situation like that, instead of assigning a route as a van, you would actually assign a separate route for each of your technicians, for your primary technicians that go out alone. In a case where you would have 2 of them going at the same time, you could actually block off the schedule. So for instance, if the person who normally runs with this blue van and the person with the green van are going to do a job together, you could actually dual book it. You could book it for both of them at the same time. Or if you go in, there's maybe an even easier way. If you have some junior technicians who want to join in on a job, when you go to schedule a job where you have the duration and all the information over here, you can actually look up and assign your technicians to those jobs. And what happens when you assign the technicians and you put this on the schedule, it automatically keeps track of them for doing that job, which comes in handy later when you calculate any kind of commissions reporting. If you go in here, obviously you can change, what color the vans are, or you can change it to a technician, for instance, but you can assign a default technician to each of your routes. And that saves you a step. If they're on that truck every day, when you go to schedule, you don't even have to select a technician because it already knows who's going out. So what happens when you open a work order, and I'll show you an example of this. Let's say we've got this one open right here, and this is order 5068. When you open a work order, our system saves it in memory, and when you go to the scheduling screen, it automatically knows which work order you just had open, and it shows you what that work order is right here. So what you could do, you could schedule it. For instance, you schedule it right here for this van, and then you click here, like you click new job, then you go to the next van and you do the same thing. So you could click both these vans. It uses the same order number, the same time, same criteria, same job information, all of it. So you could schedule that for both vans easily without even leaving that screen. And I'm just going to bring up a couple of options here. Now, if you have a lot of jobs scheduled in one day, you have the option to select a route summary sheet. So it prints on one sheet all the important details, times, and locations of the jobs you have in order for the day. For the number of orders, you can set it to print one copy of the work order, or if you want to, if you do the kind of thing where you give a customer a copy of the order and then you have them sign one to bring back to the office, you could set that to 2 copies if you wanted to, or 3 copies or 4, however many you wanted to. The other option I've seen a lot of people do is they'll sort of leave the work order blank and they'll print that out with their route packet that they send out with the technician. Technician fills everything out in the field, and then what they'll do is from their mobile device. If they have an Android or an iPhone, a BlackBerry, or a tablet, they'll actually complete the order from the mobile device and email the order to the customer before they leave. So realistically, if you wanted to, you could go completely paperless. You could have your technicians check everything from the schedule. You could email them the route packet if you wanted to and just have them open it on their phone, or they could just access it from the phone directly and just email everything to the customer if they're open for that. We have a bunch of different security levels, and when you go in to set up your employee accounts, I'll give you an example here. When you go in and you look at the access level, you can go in and you can select for yourself, for instance, you can say, I want to be an administrator. But if it's somebody who's going out in the field and they just want to check their own schedule, not see what everybody else is doing for their schedule, you don't want anybody to have access to financial reports or marketing, any financial sensitive information about the company, you can select them to an agent, which is going to give them what they need to go out, use everything from mobile, do what they have to have access to without seeing stuff that you don't want them to see. And you've got a bunch of different levels in here. You've got a manager level administrator who can do everything, a manager who can do just about everything. You've got technicians who just go out and basically what they need to know is what their job entails, and they can't see anybody else's schedule. They can't delete things. They can't change commission rates, things like that. And when you sign up, we actually will send you out a list of the security roles, and you can kind of compare and contrast and figure out what's best for your technician or your agent or your CSR. Yeah, so for finance, one that's really useful is accounts past due. If you just want to find out who owes money at this point in time, or invoices with a balance due. I think between these top three reports, between accounts receivable, past due, and balance due, you'll find that one of them fits your needs better than the other, and you'll probably gravitate toward one of those. You can pull for a specific time period. If you want to look at payments received for the month or the quarter, you can do that. So if you have to do any kind of tax preparation or just any kind of accounting, like your CPA calls and need some information, you can generate that for them. It's all included with the system, and you log in the same way that you would anywhere else, from the computer, from the mobile device, I've gone on from my PlayStation and actually gotten on there. So it looks a lot different when you first pull it up because it's optimized for a smaller screen. But when you first log in, you can go to your schedule immediately and see what you have for the day, see if any jobs have changed. You can pull up your orders. Just like we did from the other system, you pull up your orders, it'll have all their information. You scroll down to the bottom, and where it has the line items, it'll show, the carpet cleaning, the carpet repair, the pert, everything's listed there the same way. You can also, from the mobile app, you can do your upsells on the spot if you've got the permission set for that, so your technician can do that. They can complete the order right after the job's done, and they can email it to that customer. And that way, when you get back to the office at night, you don't have a lot of extra work to do. You're already done. And from here, you can create a new account if you need to. You can go to existing accounts. You look at your schedules, or if you're walking out of somebody's house and their neighbor says, hey, how much do you charge to do this? And you want to book a job, you can schedule the job from your mobile phone right there. And as soon as you schedule it from mobile, if somebody in the office is looking at the schedule, they see that job on there. Yeah, absolutely. So if you have somebody in the office, they have from the computer version, the full version, there's a messaging feature where they can create a message to a technician. It's almost like an instant messenger kind of thing. So when you go in here, you can either create a new message to somebody else in the field or back at the office. And if there are any messages for you, they'll display here with a link to open them up. And it works just like just like an email program, just like an instant message would, you can send it back and forth, but it's all internal to the system.
Is there any mapping capability with directions?
We do a Google route. So if you schedule, for instance, if you have 4 or 5 different jobs scheduled in a day, you can bring up a Google route on your mapping, and it'll actually show you the locations on the map in the order that you have them, which helps for redirecting, especially if you're in an area where you have a lot of bridges or waterways that may navigate a little bit differently. You can kind of show those in there. We also have GPS location where it'll sync up with that.
I don't know if that's going to, oh, that will.
Yeah, I don't know if this will show you here, and of course it brings up a map of the whole United States because the locations are different. But it would show you from your location. It'll give you a map of their address in there. We don't charge for any kind of updates to new software. We don't charge for the number of users you have logged in at once, or the number of people you want to assign an account to, or number of employees. We don't charge anything for support. When you first sign up with us, we actually will go through and we'll do, a 1-hour training to kind of walk you through the ropes with your data that's imported, so you're actually seeing live customer data from your database. If you don't have customer data and you're a new franchise, we'll walk through and set up some test accounts and have you walk through everything. And so we're going to walk through start to finish. We'll show you how the marketing works. And then if you have questions, you get in here and you'll notice that there is a lot of information. And we make it initially in the training, we set it up real basic. This is how you do it to make sure everything works. But as you start getting used to the system, you'll see other things, and you can call in anytime, and you can send in emails anytime, and we'll respond to those and walk you through it, and we don't charge anything extra for that.